this has the potential to be particularly scary and there's nobody working on it. We need to get as many people in here as fast as we can. I felt like there was something more that I wanted to do. I wasn't super sure what that was at that stage, but I had this nagging feeling of wanting to contribute more. Ended up getting my promotion on, I think, a Monday evening, and scheduled a call with HR right then to say that I was leaving and going to join the startup, and was out the door by Friday. I went from running a chain of premium pet resorts and dog daycares in Australia, splashing around in water parks for dogs and scooping poop, to 18 months later working at AI policy here in London.
It's great to be here with David Conrad, originally from Australia, now with us in the London rain. And so you co-founded Kip, a premium pet care chain, and you scaled it across Australia. And then in 2023, you decided to pivot into the AI policy world. And so you're now the managing director of Talos, where you're training early career professionals and helping to place them into EU and UK AI policy jobs. And you also completed Blue Dot's AI governance course in 2024, and just recently completed the AGI strategy course. Really excited to have you here.
Thanks for having me.
So I'm curious to start with your backstory. What was your upbringing like in Australia, and what is your how has your life taken you to be here today?
Yeah, right back to the start. So yeah, born in Brisbane in Australia. Had a very happy, pretty easy childhood, all things considered. Moved to Sydney maybe, I think it was in 2013 or something like that. And so did most of my studies and then started my career in Sydney. Yeah, not a whole lot, not that exciting of a backstory. But,
Yeah. And you studied civil engineering and finance.
Yeah, so at university.
Yeah, what was the decision when you were 17?
Yeah.
You're like, what do I do?
Yeah,
and you
there
decided
was
finance and civil engineering.
Come from a very medical family. Both my parents are doctors. Older brother's a doctor. His now wife is a doctor. So there was a lot of pressure in that direction, and I was a bit of a black sheep and knew that I never wanted to go down that path. So wasn't sure exactly what I wanted to do, but thought that it, honestly, as far as I got, was that I thought I wanted to wear a suit and work in a tall building, and so.
Okay.
Engineering and finance seemed like as good of a bet as any, but always pretty maths focused at school as well. So I think that was roughly where my head was at, but really didn't have any idea for the first 3 to 5 years of my university what I was going to do.
Yeah. Why do you think you wanted to wear a suit and work in a tall building? What was it about your like teenage years that led you to feel like that was your desire?
I don't know if there's an answer that reflects well on me here. I think it just seemed like that seemed like fun. I think I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do, but I knew that working in a hospital seemed pretty miserable. You know, that's where people go when they're sick and down on their luck. Was never not particularly good at English at school, so I didn't want to be a lawyer or anything like that. It just felt like those were the paths that were still open. But I think it was a lot of just, almost on autopilot, just trying to keep as many doors open as possible. But besides that, it took a while to figure out what was going to be next.
How did your family feel about you rebelling from the medical path?
Yeah, it was not... Fine. It was not that big of a rebellion. I think rebelling in my own way, but it's not like I got any face tattoos or left to start a band or anything like that. And I was in bands in high school, but they never went anywhere. It was, I think it was a pretty safe form of rebellion, all things told.
And then you went to BCG in 2017? Was that?
BCG 2017.
What led you to then? I guess that is you're wearing the suit, you're in the big building. What was that journey like?
Yeah, I think that honestly had a little bit of the same keeping the doors open thing. But at university, I had done an internship in private equity and I was very seriously considering taking that as a full-time job, and then ended up almost on a whim applying to work at BCG, and had quite a tough time deciding between those two. But in the end, again, in the spirit, I suppose, of keeping things open and not knowing exactly what I wanted to do when I grew up, so to speak, I was pretty attracted by the appeal of going and working in government and also in a bunch of big companies and doing shorter, pretty diverse cases with companies. And overall, that was a pretty amazing experience. I think I never really felt like I was going to be there long term. I don't think I ever saw myself making partner or anything like that. But still, some of my best friends come from that cohort. It's some of the smartest, most creative people I've had the chance to work with, and it was pretty. There was a lot of good experience of dropping into the federal government for a 2 or 3 week project and actually seeing how the sausage gets made. It was pretty exciting.
Yeah. That's really cool. Yeah, a lot of people go and work at a consulting firm for 2 years, and there's a story the consulting firms tell, which is, if you join us for 2 years, you'll do a grad scheme. We'll train you we'll give you a bunch of skills. We'll train you, and then you can decide to stay or leave.
Yeah.
I'm curious, what were the biggest skills that you actually developed in your time at BCG that have then been later have been useful for you later on?
Yeah, I think it's a good question. It's very it's quite open-ended stuff. So it's definitely getting things done and a lot of the soft skills of making a slide deck, but actually being able to communicate with people or writing good emails and knowing how to just sort of exist in the corporate world almost. When I think back to, I definitely remember starting initially on the job, and there would be days where I would spend hours laboring over an email to send to someone and working out if I sign off with warm regards or kind regards, all those little things that are just don't seem that important, but I think were useful. And then there was some big, I had a project working with some, big data on a pricing, doing price elasticity for a big company. And there were some technical skills there, but the things that I actually still use to this day are mostly soft skills of how to work with others, how to quickly get up the curve on something, how to sort of scope out a problem and then go and solve it as quickly as you can. Those sorts of things were the biggest takeaways.
And what was the most fun project during that time for you? What was the thing where you're like, oh, I feel most alive when I'm doing this?
It was. So I was involved in what can I say? I was involved in a digitization case for the federal government, and that was very exciting. Almost again, largely because, and this might end up being a theme, but because it was just the most incredible team. There was probably 12 of us, and of that, 6 or 7 were some of just the most brilliant people I've met, and multiple Rhodes scholars and all kinds of ridiculous people, and just the raw. It was very exciting to be in these meetings and just see the raw horsepower, the amount of interesting discussions people would bring to the case, but then also on team dinners, just the crazy philosophical discussions we'd have outside of that when we were going. Again, I don't know how much I'm allowed to say still with NDAs and stuff, but the project work itself was interesting. We were sort of shepherding an RFP process with 2 consortiums trying to work out who to go with. And so there was a lot of actual work and defining of policy briefs and working out how to present stuff to cabinet so that it would so they'd be able to make decisions. But yeah, I think a lot of the excitement about that project was just the creativity and brain power that was on the team.
Yeah. I feel similar excitement about working at the little Blue Dot team.
Yeah.
And it's working in small, intense, high-performing teams is a super huge privilege. And I'm curious on, so you spent 2 years at BCG, and then you pivoted to a startup. I'm curious, what was the problem that you saw that you felt you wanted to actually start trying to solve when you decided to co-found KIP?
Yeah, well, as you say, about the 2 years at BCG, it was basically 2 years to the day. I ended up getting my promotion at BCG on, I think, a Monday evening, and scheduled a call with HR right then to say that I was leaving and going to join the startup, and was out the door by Friday. So it was all a pretty quick turnaround. The inspiration behind the startup was definitely, so started with 2 co-founders, Will and Sam, who had started maybe 6 months before I joined. And the inspiration was very much that we saw that there was a bunch of, it's just there wasn't a good answer for where to put your dog or your cat when you go on holidays in Australia. So there was sort of hundreds of mom and pop operations, but no particularly big, well-respected brands. I mean, we always grew up with golden retrievers as a kid, and if we went on holidays, we'd get a pet sitter or something, and it'd just be someone we found off a university jobs board or something random. It was, it just didn't feel very professional. And we could see that there was like this growing trend of like humanization and fur babies, and it just didn't feel like it was good enough for where the market was going with dogs. So we ended up building a much more premium thing, but very Australia focused. So we did a lot of market research, but the premium end of the pet resorts and doggy daycares in the US is very much like, how bougie can you be? There'd be a lot of fake Dolce and Gabbana and like bringing meals out under cloches and silly things like that just like no Australian really resonated with.
Yeah.
Whereas like our focus was always like as much outdoor space as possible. How do we have like a walk and a water fun park that we took the dogs through, and then like really training up our staff so they were good at group play, so we could have these groups of 20 dogs all playing together safely for sort of hours at a time. Yeah, it was a very fun experience.
That's awesome. And what convinced you to go and pivot into the startup world specifically, as opposed to staying in the kind of corporate world? Like, I imagine you were not wearing a suit at the startup.
Yeah, well, I left BCG in a very much a suit project, and then the following Monday I was on site at a location we were looking to buy in Brisbane, wearing jeans and a t-shirt and I picked up dog poo on my first day. It was a very rough awakening. I think the thing that most appealed to me was being able to getting away from almost corporate bureaucracy, and being able to just do things, and then getting away from the consulting, recommending people do stuff, and going towards actually being able to make decisions and own the impact yourself. I think that was sort of, when I first came into it, that was a rough sense that it was something that I was interested in doing, but I didn't really know what it would feel like. But I have really strong memories of maybe 6 months in, we had this meeting where we were like, we haven't revised our prices in a while. Do we think we need to change prices? What should we do? And we pulled up the website, and I think we pulled up a few of our competitors, and we're like, okay, this one needs to go up. This one, someone complained last week about it, so it's probably about right. Let's leave it there. And then we just put the numbers up, and that was the end of the story. I didn't make a slide deck. I didn't make an Excel model. You could just do things, and that was really exciting. And like, I definitely got addicted to the just doing stuff.
I'm curious if there was any moment where you felt like, this is really working. We've nailed something here, and I'm confident we can now scale across a whole bunch of cities throughout Australia.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good. Early on, there's a few different moments. I think early on there was a moment where I opened a new location, and this was a greenfield location that didn't have a business there previously, and just turned on Google Ads, and pretty immediately, just seeing how quickly the phone started ringing and people started booking in from scratch, it sort of felt like there's something here. There's a bit of an untapped demand. This could work in the future. And then from there, maybe, I think at the start, we weren't sure if we thought we might just have a bunch of different ones, but not necessarily put them under the same brand name. So there are a few steps along that journey where we ended up getting a site in the Hunter Valley in New South Wales that was like one of the best in the country at the time. Just really beautiful, rolling hills. It's picturesque, sort of looks like a place you go for a wedding or something. And that was when we really became pretty convinced about this like more active, more outdoorsy, premium end of the market. And so from there, as we started to roll that out to other sites and build our first water park in a separate location and that sort of thing, and just seeing that really worked. I think it was somewhere around there that there was a real moment.
This is purely curiosity. Yeah. What is a water park for
Great
dogs?
Question. Yeah. They vary a little bit. My favorite ones are, they look like running creeks and that sort of thing. So it's just sort of an area where there's like natural, what looks natural, but sort of self-filtering creeks or pools, and sometimes like a spray fountain, and the staff will be in there with like a tennis balls and just like giving the dogs a chance to like jump in pools and jump under fountains and that sort of thing. Yeah. I realize it sounds crazy,
Yeah.
but it's a winner.
It sounds
Everybody loves
magical. It sounds really nice. Yeah.
No slides or anything.
No, maybe the kip in the future might build out some slides. So I'm curious then, what happened for you to decide I'm now going to transition from this company, which you'd been at for many years and had helped to grow, to then explore the much murkier and chaotic world of AI. What was the thing that happened in the world that led you to think, oh, something is amiss here. I think I should uproot my entire life, move continent, go work in a much more chaotic environment.
Yeah, so I suppose, so I started at KIP in, I think, May or June of 2019. And then in 2020, there was this big pandemic. I don't know if you got that over here.
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah, so that was a pretty stressful time. So we sort of had, overall for the business, about a year of runway where things were going really well. I think we had 5 locations at that stage, starting to look really exciting. And then with the pandemic, overnight, borders were closed, all of our revenue went to zero. It was an incredibly stressful time. And that ended up being a pretty full-on sort of year. Then after that, we started to get back on our feet, but it was, there was just a lot of, it definitely became quite a stressful job. We sort of spent a year there checking, just reading news updates on COVID numbers for like morning, noon, and night. And then I think that built up so that even at the end, once things were starting to hum again, we ended up getting to, by the time I was about to leave, maybe 15 locations or something like that. I think there was just a lot of pent up, I ended up burning out basically. There was a lot of pent up stress and it was a very all-encompassing job. And I think as well, there was something in me that was like, this is very satisfying. It's quite cool to be able to build a consumer brand, and we've got hundreds of staff who have personal relationships with, and all these customers who are really cool and know a bunch of the dogs. But I felt like there was something more that I wanted to do. I wasn't super sure what that was at that stage, but I had this sort of nagging feeling of wanting to contribute more. And I think I'd been loosely following EA and 80,000 Hours and those sorts of podcasts and things for maybe a decade, but would never have called myself an EA at that stage. And separately had thrown around the idea of, on the other hand, going into politics or maybe going into like some sort of a policy role in the Australian government or something like that. And I really wanted to come to London and do a Masters of Public Policy, really to take the year to like test my thinking and figure out what was going to be the next step, like how I could go and do something more impactful and, on a slightly bigger scale. Yeah.
What was it about having an impact that was important to you?
Yeah, I think I don't think I'm not particularly, and part of the reason I ended up being a bit grossed out by the idea of politics is I'm not that interested in, the prestige or anything like that. I think it is just a genuine sense of, I want to be able to get to the end of the year or get to the end of the month and say like, I contributed to something big here, and the world in some small way is a better place than it was before. And like, I think there is a role for that in making great businesses that keep people happy. And I wouldn't knock that. And I could see myself one day going back to do something like that. But there was something in me saying like, I could see, a chance to help more people more directly on some of these big problems that were like clearly starting to pop up. I would say at the time I was less aware. This was before GPT 3.5 had come out, and people were starting to talk about it a bit, but I think it was a more general, like, if something big happens like another pandemic or, maybe climate change or something, there are a bunch of big problems out there that need solving. Would it be better if I was helping on those rather than working in a consumer-facing startup?
And when did that come to a point where you decided you actually wanted to dedicate your career to that path, or to like the path of like trying to optimize for impact?
As much as there was a eureka moment, it was probably during the Masters itself. I think when I went to do that, there was still part of me thinking, I probably went into the Masters exploring what I wanted to do next rather than being certain that it was in this particular area. But there are a few, really, it was when GPT 3.5 came out, and a bunch of people who I respect, who seem to know what they're talking about, were saying has the potential to be particularly scary and there's nobody working on it. That's when it started to feel like there was both a big problem and something, and not enough people working on it. I think maybe there was a bit of not quite imposter syndrome, but a feeling that, like, with lots of other problems that are out there, that's something that somebody else is doing, or that's not I don't need to do that because somebody else will be on top of it. And there's already people working on climate change, and there's already people who have been thinking about, government and economic policy or whatever it is for their whole careers. And then this seemed like an area where it was like, actually, I don't know anything yet, really, but I don't think anybody does. And we need to get as many people in here as fast as we can. This might be a space where, like, a more generalist person could really contribute. So I think that was probably a big part of it.
And how did it feel after you made that decision in your mind that you wanted to point your career in the kind of AI policy direction? How did that feel for you?
Yeah, I think it's a good question. I think a bit definitely exciting to have a clear direction for what, I mean, I've said a lot here that I was very into, like, keeping doors open and not knowing exactly what I wanted to do. So there's something very appealing about having a mission and being like, I think I know what the next at least couple of years look like here. I think I know roughly what sort of problems I want to be working on. But that combined with, there was definitely a lot of, it felt like a quite an uphill battle. I was sort of realizing I'm here in a new country, in a new city, trying to enter a new field, don't have any connections. I did just about every course I could find online, and I went to a bunch of conferences, and most of them were clearly not the right answer. There was a lot of fumbling around in the dark and trying to find my feet. So I think for quite a while there, maybe 6 to 12 months, there was a bit of, have I made a mistake here? Is this the wrong thing to be pursuing? Do I need to change course? So it was definitely exciting, but there was a lot of trepidation there as well.
And what helped the most for you getting through that period of uncertainty? Because I think a lot of people doing our courses have this experience of, they become convinced that they want to work on this topic, but their first few months or even first year is a lot of fumbling in the dark, a lot of, like, trying things and things not sticking, or not really understanding enough or knowing enough people to know where to go. Yeah, what was the thing that helped you get through that period such that you then could land the role at Talos / I think Training for Good initially? Or
yeah. I think probably there's a lot of leaning on people. So I think there were lots of little moments that sort of kept me going along the way. I think doing a 80K careers chat was quite valuable, and having someone external say, yes, there actually is a role for you here. We don't know what exactly, but here are some people you should speak to. And then having lots of conversations, some online, but a lot of just coffees with people, yourself, a bunch of other people I just met who were working in the space or who were trying to get into the space, and starting to build those connections. I think a big part of it was being in London and feeling like I was in a city where things were happening. So I was able to I really forced myself to go to a bunch of talks where there was going to be a networking drinks afterwards. And as uncomfortable as it would be, say I'm not allowed to go home until I've, gotten 3 people's names and had a bit of a conversation, like all that little stuff, just to feel like I was part of a community or something. I found that really valuable. Those are probably the biggest parts of it. And then starting to doing some courses and seeing that I could contribute. I think doing the Blue Dot courses, just being like, okay, I can see myself working in this field. This is, I don't know this stuff yet, but I could see how you could get to the point of writing a policy brief that actually contributes here. And also I did an AI safety camp project, and sort of getting to the end of that with a couple of papers that felt relatively important, that we were quite proud of, and was like, okay, there's a path here to maybe go into a professional role in some sort of policy, actually research or research managing. It felt like it was tractable, but yeah, it was definitely, yeah, I would say I was not far away from packing it in and starting to look at other opportunities. It was, yeah, it was quite a long journey into the field, and it's not easy.
How did you then transition into training for good?
Yeah.
And then into that evolving into Talos? What was the moment that it landed, and how did that come about?
So training for good it's quite lucky almost. I don't actually remember how I initially came across Killian, but was sort of talking to people during that sort of year when I was looking around. I was very much tossing up between, do I want to work in like direct policy writing, research briefs myself, or do I want to be doing more of a field building, higher leverage, but a bit further away from the direct action role? And sort of just to test that a bit on a whim, I came across Killian, and who was running Training for Good at the time, and volunteered, I think, 2 days a week while I was still applying for other jobs, just as a general odd body, just helping with whatever they needed help with, basically. And doing that was really good because it gave me a chance to see how one of these organizations works, that they are actually having an impact. Sort of, I'd never really considered field building as a thing to do, but I was still looking at other stuff. And then during that, I applied for a job with the UK AI Policy Directorate at the time, and received an offer there, and I was very torn on whether sort of to go in at a more junior level, almost start again, but start building skills as like a policy researcher and see what that life would be like, or to do something that felt a bit more similar to startup world and sort of help run the operational side of an organization that does more of the training for other people. And I don't know if there was, again, I don't know if there was a single eureka moment that made Training for Good, now Talos, feel like the exact right answer, but there's been a bunch of, as much as there was, it was probably the first time I went to one of our Brussels summits. So we run a fellowship twice a year. It's an 8-week training program that's done online. And then for about, at the time, it was about 15, now about 25 people. Then everybody comes to Brussels for a week of quite intense speakers and networking events and that sort of thing. And seeing everybody in person there, and the sorts of roles that they were all starting to go into, as well as the alumni who were coming back to events and who were now running the AI policy team at think tanks or working in the AI office in Brussels, that really made it clear to me that actually the stuff we were doing day to day at Talos could have the potential to sort of train as many as several hundred people in the AI space pretty soon. And so that gave me enough of a thing to hook on to, like an impact story that I could sort of believe and see how this could really grow.
In 2023, you were deciding between going into UKAC and policy work, or going into field building, and you ultimately decided to focus on field building and scaling the number of people working in this space. I'm curious if there are any specific clinches for you. You mentioned the summits, but I'm curious what was the thing that really, the specific argument that made you think, yes, field building is where I could have the biggest impact here?
Yeah, I think comparative advantage and just doing what you're good at, what you have skills in, and what actually gets you out of bed in the morning. I sort of, in doing the AI safety camp and a few things like that, I had a bit of experience of just sitting by myself and thinking and writing research for a day straight. And I just don't like that mode of working as much. I sort of came to realize that actually I like being around people, I like connecting with people. So a lot of it was just, what do I think I can contribute the most in? And similarly, it's sort of, my skills were more in building an organization and doing that sort of thing. So I thought particularly, I probably more could have seen myself doing policy at a small think and do tank, sort of Center for Future Generations or something like that, that publishes reports but then actually goes and pushes for them and tries to steer policy from the outside. I think working in the UK government might have killed me, just how bureaucrat, and by all accounts AC is on the good side of this, but I still think having to ask for approval for not having the freedom to just do stuff doesn't sit well with me.
One thing I really like about Blue Dot's expense policy is act in Blue Dot's best interest. And so there's just like a flat rule that like when someone joins the team, they have total ability to just spend however much money. And I like explicitly want to keep the rules as small as possible and give people as much freedom and autonomy as possible. And it's quite insane to me just how different it is in the government, where there are so many processes. Obviously, it is still very, very important for people to go into government, but it takes a specific type of person who can thrive there. For Talos, there's a bunch of different field building orgs. I'm curious if you could describe more what Talos does and how it differs from other organizations that exist in this space.
Yeah, so we train people for early career people mostly today for jobs in AI policy in Europe. So the big differentiators are Europe, defined broadly, including the UK, and AI policy rather than technical safety or something like that. So we have quite a small cohorts, quite a high touch approach where we take 2 cohorts a year of a maximum of 25 people, and we build really deep relationships with all of them. We have select them from, I think, last cohort was from about 1,000 applications, so we're pretty particular on who we take, and just try to, yes, teach them, yes, give them the skills they need to succeed, but also spend a lot of effort on sort of soft skills and how to actually get change achieved in the world, as well as building this really tight alumni network where we regularly host dinners in different cities and get sort of 10 to 20 alumni from different cohorts who meet and end up jumping into projects with each other and that sort of thing. So I think that the emphasis on Europe and governance specifically is sort of the top line thing, but then we have a real focus on the people and on the ongoing network and the relationship.
So you're doing the training and then you're helping them land the jobs itself. How does the placement component of Talos work?
So yeah, the training is an 8-week reading group over Zoom, about 10 hours a week of work there. Then we have the 1 week in Brussels with everyone together. And then about 2/3 to 3/4 of people get a paid 6-month placement at a think tank or a government organization or something like that. So we've got placements at the OECD and at RAND Europe and Apollo and a bunch of different organizations doing cool AI policy stuff. We'd have enough placements for everyone to do a placement. The people who miss out, it's typically because they've already found another job during the reading group or something like that. We take a lot of effort to like do a very detailed matching between the fellows and the placements and making sure that you're doing real work from day one. So we've got quite a high conversion there for most of them turning into real jobs. And a few of the organizations have sort of reached out and said that, they effectively use us now to hire their junior talent because we spend an awful lot of time picking people and training them up. And so they just see that as easier than going out and hiring themselves. In CFG in particular, they have ended up with quite a number of Talos fellows there. And so Alex, as well as Max, who's the director of the advanced AI unit there, are pushing very hard on CERN for AI, publishing these reports, which have like pretty directly led to, comments in speeches from Ursula von der Leyen, and it clearly is like in the direction of becoming EU policy. So I think that's a pretty, that just is a series of outcomes that wouldn't have happened without Talos fellows getting into key roles.
So Talos is placing, on the order of 30 to 40 people every year, and you're taking about 50 through your fellowships. However, there are hundreds, if not thousands, of people who want to work on AI governance and AI safety. And obviously, the scale of the problem is much, much greater than the current scale of the workforce. I'm curious what you think Talos and the rest of the AI safety field can do to help to scale the workforce of people who are trying to solve these problems.
Yeah, it's a really tough question. I think we focus very much on, we put a lot of emphasis on being, as I say, high touch and sort of quite a bespoke training program. And so we're not sure that we can offer that to like hundreds and hundreds of people a cohort or something. But at the same time, we see that there is this massive demand and for people trying to get into the field and for jobs to exist. So we're sort of approaching that in a few different ways. I think with our default fellows, we definitely select, we've started to select more for entrepreneurial spirit and for people who we think have a reasonably high chance of maybe doing something at a think tank for a couple of years, but then starting their own think tank and hiring a team under them, or starting a unit within an organization and hiring there and sort of helping to pull people up after them rather than lone wolf actors, because that doesn't feel sustainable. And then the other side is we're launching a pilot of a policy leaders program. This is going to be a similar thing, but this is aimed at people with between 10 and 20 years of work experience already, who can come in day one at sort of director or associate director level positions in think tanks or in government organizations. And we hope that those people will be particularly well placed to go and hire and build teams around them, and hopefully hire sort of on the order of 10 people within a year or so. So we think those are the approaches we're taking at this stage, but it's a big issue and we haven't fully cracked it, I don't think.
On the policy leaders program, I'm curious if you could share more on what the profile of the person you're looking for is and what value you are hoping to offer them such that they would be excited to join the program.
So I think a couple of different profiles, but one profile that we're quite excited about for this program will be people with sort of deep experience, say, in the EU, in the Brussels bubble, who've got networks across the field and who know how to get policy done. Maybe they've been working in tech policy, but in an unrelated field, sort of doing GDPR work or something like that. Maybe they've been a lobbyist or something, but someone who's got deep experience, knows who to talk to, and is passionate about AI and sees that AI governance is a pressing issue, but doesn't have the background yet. So we sort of see ourselves as a bit of a capstone. We give them the training they need, and then we place them into a job that sort of kicks their career off in a new direction. And also with these people, there's often a bit of a challenge. There's more of a challenge around there just are higher switching costs. So, with our younger fellows, they've just finished a master's or a PhD in a lot of cases. They're looking for the next thing. It's a pretty perfect time for them to switch. Whereas these, policy leaders fellows, many of them we expect to have families and children, and it's just a higher cost to switch jobs at that stage. So we're putting a lot of effort into finding 6 to 12-month placements for them, potentially with higher stipends, so that it's not as painful of a transition, and we can de-risk that for the highest quality candidates.
When is this program intended to launch? What's the timeline for it?
So the pilot will be launching by invitation only in March of this year, and then we're looking to do a full initial cohort that's more open to the public 6 months after that. So it will be rolling out in September.
September 2026.
September 2026.
So if Talos succeeds over the next few years and you place hundreds of junior talent as well as experienced talent into roles in the UK and European governments focused on ensuring that we build beneficial AI systems, we decrease the risks, etc. What's your hope for how AI regulation looks different as a result of that?
We're not blanket pessimists. I think we very excited to have actually good AI agent in my pocket and to have abundance and diseases cured and stuff. So we're not on, I don't think any of us really think that the goal is just to stop all AI development. We're pretty excited about the upsides, but there's massive risks here, and we obviously, broadly, the goal would be to get those upsides without any other downsides. Now, what does that actually look like in practice? I think in practice, Talos will know we've succeeded. There's sort of a couple of things. There's going to be there's a lot of white space at the moment when it comes to the policies that we need that are going to shape this. So whether, I think one key indicator of success will be that a Talos fellow or a bunch of Talos fellows were responsible for coming up with some idea, be it a CERN for AI, be it some new, a liability regulation framework or something that meaningfully changes AI safety and that just wouldn't have existed without their work. I'm personally not super clear what that would be, but I think it'll be one of those it when you see it situations. Some sort of a snappy policy title with a big detailed brief behind it that ends up getting put into European law and potentially adopted in America and the UK as well. And then a second thing that I think we'll know that we've succeeded is there's, with our focus on a small number of high impact people, I think there's quite a high chance that there's going to be moments where there's sort of moments of crisis. And in those moments of crisis, it's all well and good to have, hundreds of thousands of people working in AI safety, but there's only going to be a small number of people in the room making snap decisions, on the order of days or weeks if some major AI risks eventuate. And we think it's very important that we can try to get Talos fellows into those rooms. So we're starting to build the pipeline now of people so that hopefully in a year or two's time, it's obvious that they would be in those positions, whether they're in government positions or just like have built a senior name for themselves.
So in August of 2024, you did the Blue Dot's AI governance course. I'm curious what motivated you to join the course, and what was the biggest source of value that you got from your participation in that?
Yeah, I think the thing that motivated me to do the course was just to build up skills and connections in the field. I was sort of coming in as an interested outsider, but really didn't know what I was talking about. So I think looking at the curriculum online, I already got a pretty clear idea that there was a lot of good stuff there, and I wanted to do the course, and almost as a forcing function to actually do the readings and do the writing and embed some of this knowledge in my head. And then the other side of it, as I said, was to build networks in the space. So I was lucky enough on that cohort to be in a really great group with a bunch of people who were just clearly excited about breaking into the field, really switched on, asked lots of deep probing questions that really improved my understanding of AI topics. And then out of that course, I think 2 or 3 people ended up being Talos alumni, Talos fellows in future cohorts. So it was great to start to build those connections early. So I think between the knowledge and the networks were the 2 biggest benefits I got.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And you've just completed the Blue Dot AGI strategy course, which is a new course we launched a few months ago. I'm curious, what was your experience on that course like, and how has that course shaped your thinking for Talos over the next year?
Yeah, great question. I think the inspiration to do that course was a little bit, in my role at Talos, I'm largely on the operational side of things, and I spend, too much of my time fundraising and doing communications and not enough time thinking about what's the latest in AI policy. So I signed up to the course initially to brush up on what's going on in the world of AI safety and AI policy. I think the thing I really got out of it that I wasn't expecting was a real kick in the pants to just go harder, faster, do more, basically. So there was a real emphasis on urgency in that course and the need to just get out and build things. And I think that's then pretty directly trickled into my work at Talos. And we've got a strategy retreat coming up where we're going to be working out after what do we want to be doing in the next 6 months, in the next 3 years? How do we go faster? How do we actually have as big of an impact in the AI safety field as we can? So I think that was unexpected, but that was the biggest impact I got out of the course.
That's cool. What specific thing in the course most drove that home for you?
Yeah, it was, I think, just a bit of a vibe. It was a constant theme throughout the readings and all the discussions. But I think there's a real emphasis. Maybe the governance course before that was sort of structured as 8 weeks, I think, of like, here are readings you can do. And at the end, there was a bit of a plan your career. But mostly the point of this is to do the readings and learn what's going on. There was a lot more focus in the strategy course on sort of the last 2 or 3 weeks on getting really tactical, working out specifically what you can do to help, how you want to. So I think just having the headspace and also then having to it's quite easy within an organization. We talk about our strategy a lot, but we all sort of know what we're doing. But there was something nice about being with a group of strangers every week and having to justify what we were going to do next and defend why I thought this was the best use of my time and why I thought it was actually important. Yeah. So I think the conversations and the being forced to really back yourself that you are doing the highest thing, and if not, why not?
The course, at least as of recording, has these kind of layers of defense as a framing, where it's like preventing dangerous AI training, constraining dangerous AI capabilities, and withstanding dangerous AI actions. And they very roughly map onto different potential futures for how AI could go in terms of one cluster of strategies, which is the governments could do some like huge action to control data centers, control the AI companies, and try and throttle AI development. And that's kind of one strategy that people propose. And they would believe that AI poses hugely catastrophic threats, and there's no way to build safe AI, so we must stop it. Then there's other strategies which look more like proliferate AI development very widely, give loads of people compute, ensure that there is no intense power concentration, and then build lots of societal defenses to ensure that the widespread power that has come about from this technology is not able to cause large-scale harm. And then there's kind of another strategy which is a bit more, how would I describe it? I was going to say harebrained, but maybe that's a bit unfair. A bit more controversial strategy, which is let's build an aligned superintelligence, and then let's defer to the aligned superintelligence about what to do about the future, and let's ensure the aligned superintelligence has control. And I guess I'm curious where you see Talos, like in this kind of this is like a very broad frame or a very broad categorization, and it's always just like our categorization as opposed to the correct one. So it's just like one frame. But I'm curious which parts of that resonated the most with how you guys are thinking about your role in the kind of AI safety ecosystem and trying to ensure that we get this awesome future and don't get the dangers.
Yeah, I think there's some tensions there between, as a governance fellowship, the easiest thing is to focus on writing laws and regulations, and so that ends up looking more like constraint and more like concentration rather than diffusion of AI tools. I think we think that has a role, but are also mindful of not wanting to. I don't think we're in favor of just like blindly regulating things, and there are costs to having more regulation in general. So somewhere in the mix. I don't think we're like the goal of Talos is to just all regulation is good regulation when it comes to AI altogether. But similarly, I think it's tricky. I don't think maybe our views don't neatly fit. Speaking for the organization, but speaking for myself, I don't think it neatly fits into any one of those categories. There's some level of try a lot of everything and see which works, and take this Swiss cheese approach to defense. I think still, I think one thing we would like to see is lots of our fellows, we almost try to, we've got house views within Talos on a bunch of these topics, but we're pretty keen to take people who have different views to us. And if someone feels very strongly that the only answer here is to diffuse AI systems as widely as possible, and somebody else feels very strongly that the only answer is to stop all advanced AI development, we're very happy to take both of those people, let them develop their thinking, and then go out into the world and sort of fight it out in the marketplace of ideas and see what comes out on top. So we have our internal views, but I think it's, on some of these questions, our role is more like supporting the ecosystem and letting a bunch of ideas have the space to be tested out and see which ones are actually the right approach.
That makes a lot of sense, yeah. It's certainly no easy answers.
No.
Anyone who is confident that any of these things is the correct answer is probably overconfident.
Yeah.
Well, those are all of my questions. This has been a really great conversation. Thank you for coming on, David, and excited to see what is next for Talos.
Thank you for having me.